Shall we start? Ray, shall we start now, or we are going to wait for a few more minutes?
Yes, we can start now, Somi.
Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us from around the world. Welcome to the IAQ webinar organized by the Quality and Planet Earth Concerned think tank of the International Academy for Quality. My name is Selmi Arokira. I'm a sustainability architect and academician, and I'm delighted to be moderating this session. Today, I have the privilege to introduce a wonderful guest speaker, Willy Vandenbrande, a leading figure in the fields of quality management and sustainability. The topic Willy will explore today is very timely. It speaks to a pressing challenge organizations face worldwide, and that is how to navigate the growing complexity of sustainability frameworks and standards while striving to continuously improve their sustainability performance. And before we start the session, just let me share a brief introduction of our speaker, followed by a few housekeeping points. Willy Vandenbrande brings more than 35 years of experience in quality management, beginning as a quality manager and later as a consultant. In 1995, he founded QS Consult, a European consulting agency supporting organizations in strengthening their quality management practices. Over the years, Willy has delivered many well-received presentations at international conferences, including WCQI, EOQ, and IAQ, and he has lectured at universities worldwide. He has also written a wide range of practical and thought-provoking articles on quality management and sustainability, which have been valued by professionals across industries. His work challenges conventional thinking and inspires audiences to explore new perspectives. Willy holds a master's degree in civil engineering and a master's degree in total quality management, along with a Six Sigma Black Belt certification from the American Society for Quality. He's also an ASQ fellow and an academician of the IAQ. Within IAQ, Willy contributed as former chair of the Quality and Planet Earth Concerned think tank, playing a pivotal role in advancing the dialogue on how quality principles intersect with sustainability. In recognition of his global contribution, he received the ASQ E. Jack Lancaster Medal in 2019 for outstanding leadership in promoting quality worldwide. Today, Willy continues to share his expertise through publications and presentations focusing on sustainability, the future of quality, and face-to-face service quality. His book, Reflections on Quality in 10.5 columns, which I personally found quite thought-provoking and highly recommend, was awarded the IAQ Walter E. Messing Prize in 2025. And here's a few housekeeping notes before I pass the forum to our speaker. So the session will consist of 45-minute presentation followed by 15 minutes Q&A. Please submit your questions at any time through the chat box, and we will do our best to discuss as many of them as the time allows us. Also, a recording of the session will be shared with you in the coming days, so you can revisit the discussion or share it with the colleagues. With that, I'm thrilled to hand over the session to Willy Vandenbrande. Willy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Tomaya. Let me first see if technology works and share my screen. Okay. And if all goes well, you should now be able to see the presentation. If somebody can confirm that.
We can see it, Willy. Thank you.
Yes, Willy.
Okay, great. Thank you. Again, thanks very much for the introduction, Somaya. I want to add one small thing as well. Not only the recording will be available, but also the PDF of the presentation will be sent to all participants. So let's start with the title of the presentation, which is Keep It Super Simple in Sustainability. an action-directed approach. Now, the key element here is simple and action-directed. Okay. If you have a look at the content, I will start with mainly explaining why I think simplicity is needed, because we are making it over complex. So we'll look at that complexity. The second point will be some preliminary conditions that need to be there to apply what I will present. And what I will present, the bulk of it, is how you can integrate your sustainability actions within an ISO 9001 system. Most of you probably come from the quality world, and I think many of you work in companies that have a running ISO 9001 system. And basically the message is you do not need additional systems. You can integrate what I will say within what you have today and what is running. I'll end with some conclusions, and most of what I will say in the presentation will be about how do you work on sustainability within an organization. In the conclusions, I'll open it up a little bit to the world and society as a whole. Okay. But before we do that, let's have a look at my favorite rock band. And here they are. Now, I have to admit, they're not my favorite rock band because of their music, because I prefer Pink Floyd and David Bowie any day. But that's a matter of taste. They're not my favorite rock band for their looks either, but that's also a matter of taste. But they are my favorite rock band, of course, for their name, KISS, which is to me an abbreviation of Keep It Super Simple. To them, it's of course just a KISS. And why do we need to keep it super simple? Because we are at the moment making it very, very complex. I put together a number of standards and systems and methods that are currently available and that are all related in some way with sustainability, and specifically mainly with environmental sustainability. And this is sort of, a list. It's not a complete list, but it contains some elements. And as you can see, there are ISO standards in there, some other standards as well. There's a cooperation between ISO and the United Nations, which is a sort of a guiding document to help you manage for the Sustainable Development Goals by the United Nations. But funny enough, within the United Nations, there are other organizations as well. They're a big organization, of course. There's, for instance, the Research Institute for Social Development, and they recently released their own method of evaluating sustainability. There's the UN Global Compact. But apart from that, there are also several private or semi-private organizations that have developed their own systems. B Corps, Agree, SBT, Science-Based Targets, Global Reporting. And all of that in Europe has now culminated into the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive and Sustainability Reporting Standards from the EU. This is actually legislation. So you see, over the years, we've had standards, cooperations, United Nations, and now even legislation. But now imagine that you're the CEO of a medium-sized enterprise, not even a small one, but a medium-sized enterprise. And you really mean well. You know, you want to do something about sustainability. You think we need to do something about natural degradation. So you really mean well. And then there's a friend of yours who said, well, I watched this webinar and I have a copy of the slides here. What about you start reading this and then you can see what you will do? Well, believe me, no matter how motivated you were at the start, if this is what you're confronted with, you will not have any motivation left. We have made it way too complicated. And I'll focus a little bit to explain this a bit more in depth on the EU legislation, because in fact, when this was announced, it was seen by many as a fundamental change. This would be really something that would stimulate sustainability within Europe. And it might have, but it has been made extremely, extremely complicated with a heavy administrative burden onto it. And I'm sorry, what you see here is a small extract. From my the website of my newspaper. It's in Dutch, but it was an interview with a manager of a fairly large building company that is subjected to the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. And the guy basically, the interview was one complaint, and the guy basically made a couple of statements. One of the statements, which was entered in the title, was, this has become a matter of bookkeepers. It has become a matter of accountants. And why was he saying that? Because, of course, it's a lot of words, but if you want to apply it, he had to evaluate a 1,863 lines Excel sheet. Now, not every line was applicable, but to know if it's applicable or not, you have to go through it. He also complained that many of the questions that were in that sheet, he really didn't understand what was meant. So it has become extremely complex. As a consequence, people turn to specialists. And what you see is that this reporting has become a real cash cow for accounting companies. That's actually why he said it's become a case of accountants. Extremely complicated. Some of these people have software and they take your data and they fill it in for you, which fundamentally is already not a good idea, I think. But what you see is that we're creating something that is great for the business of sustainability, but not necessarily for the sustainability of business. And I think we need to be very careful about this. The second big problem I have with it is the word reporting. There's nothing wrong with reporting, but to be quite honest, the time for reporting has passed. We urgently need action. The situation is not very well. I will come back to that later on. So that's a problem. And there's a next problem, and that is one of the things you need to do is to look at your entire supply chain. So people will look at their suppliers that are smaller organizations that have far less means, but that will also be confronted with this. Now, as a consequence, as I said, people thought this is going to be a game changer, it's going to be great. Now there's nothing but complaints about it, like this guy in my newspaper. And now the UN is looking at simplifying it, postponing it a little bit, looking at alternative systems for smaller organizations, which fundamentally means what we would call in quality rework. They could have thought about that earlier on and made it right first time. So I think you're going to see a lot of changes to this because of the way it's been made. And the question is it really necessary to make it that complex? And I don't think so. I don't think so, and I'll talk about a way of introducing it within your quality management system with some preliminary conditions. The first one is if you have customers that say, this is what we want you to do and to fill in and to report, because everybody likes reports very much. So I sometimes think people prefer reports over action, and no report has ever changed anything. But anyway, if you get an external demand, that may be a problem, because you may have to follow whatever your customer is asking. You need to do what the customer asks. On the other hand, I also urge people not to be too humble. If you do good things and you have good systems that you yourself believe in, do defend them. I'm not saying you're going to win, but at least take the effort to defend them. Don't be too gullible of everything that is asked of you. And it's not because you're small that you're not able to think big. Okay. But anyway, that could be a problem. Then maybe part of your work would have to be to report according to what a customer wants. And that's unfortunate at that point in time. Important is to have a functioning ISO 9001:2015 system, or a system that's in development. In fact, if it's in development, that's even better, because then you can integrate this immediately as you build the system. The word functioning is different colored here. For a good reason, this is not equal to a certificated system. It's a functioning system. Now, if you want to know if your system is functioning, it's pretty easy. Observe the organization like 2 weeks before the external audit. And if everybody is running around trying to get all the documents ready for the audit, you know it is not functioning. It will probably pass the audit 2 weeks later, but it's not really a functioning system. So functioning is important. The next element is something that no matter what you do, no matter what you want to introduce, people will always say it will only work if there is management commitment. It's the same here, but I will show you that fundamentally it shouldn't be difficult to get management commitment for what I will be presenting. Wait a little and then you'll see why I'm saying that. But I do think smart managers will have no problem in supporting this. A comment for the rest of the presentation. This will be most recognizable for manufacturing companies. One reason is that, of course, manufacturing companies are the companies that are the most involved in this and that have the most impact on sustainability. Good. Let's see about the integration with ISO 9001 and how I will go about this. We'll look at the actions to take chapter by chapter of the standard. We'll start with chapter 4, context of the organization, because 1, 2, and 3 are more introductory chapters. So we'll focus on the ones that have the major content. So we look at it chapter by chapter, but what you will see is that many actions follow logically out of others. And as a consequence, most of my attention will go to the chapters 4 and 6, because they will contain the biggest changes. But because you're integrating this in a running system, many things will automatically follow. It's actually not about changing your system. It's about adding a couple of accents related to sustainability. You know, you'll see as I go along how this will work. I will also give a little bit more explanation with chapter 8, which is about the operations, because of course that are the practical things where it'll have the biggest impact. In addition, the focus is on environmental sustainability, because that, in my view, is the most critical at the moment. And within that, I will focus on 4 key elements. It's important to focus. And I have to add to that even that we'll focus on 4, but for many companies, some of these 4 might not even be very important and other are important. So it might be that for you, you need less than 4 to focus on. Now, the 4 elements are these: energy consumption, water consumption, pollution, material footprint. These are the 4. And I have to thank my dear friend, Mr. Ramanathan, Ram, who actually gave the first webinar in this series by the think tank. And he introduced that there as well. These are also the 4 key elements on the way organizations influence the biosphere. So we'll focus on these. And, we'll look at the first paragraph that I mentioned, paragraph 4. context of the organization. Now, as a consequence of the London Memorandum of 2020, ISO decided that all standards should be evaluated to see if in any way they are related or impacted towards climate change. I prefer to call it global warming, but within the standard, they use the term climate change. So that's what I will use here as well. And the people that are responsible for the ISO 9000 series, I think TC 167, they made changes to the then 2015 version. And the addendums were fairly simple. In paragraph 4.1, they added the organization shall determine whether climate change is a relevant issue. Shall means you have to do it. It's very clear. You cannot avoid that. But this is what you yourself determine. So you can for yourself say, for us, this is not a relevant issue. And then you've answered this question. I doubt if you can do that, but in any event, this is what you determine. However, in paragraph 4.2, they added a small note, and that note said, relevant interested parties can have requirements related to climate change. And then, of course, they become relevant to you as well. The most simple example, you may have a customer that asks you, what are you doing in relation to climate change? Are you doing anything on energy consumption or whatever? So this note means that if you get a requirement externally, you also need to take care of it. This is not your own decision. In fact, if you're in Europe and you fall under the EU CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, in that case, that's a relevant interested party. It's a lawmaker, and they have questions on climate change. So by definition, you need to do that. So there's already a move into that direction specifically for this topic. Now, my comments on that are two. And the first one is on the scope. This is, of course, limited in scope. There are other problems environmentally than just climate change. So it's a bit limited in scope, but it falls within the London Declaration. So that's what they were asked to do, and they did it. But the more general comment on context of the organization is that in the end, we all operate within one global context. And that universal context is Earth's biosphere. We are all dependent of it. We are all operating in it. And when I say all, I mean all humans, but also all other life forms, as we are all related within this one very unique biosphere. And that means that if this collapses, there's no point of talking about good or bad companies. It'll be survival. And that means that if you think about the context of an organization, we need to take into account that this is our context. And I know when I say that if this collapses, it looks like very much doomsday thinking and very negative. I'm generally a positive guy. However, if you look at the data, what we see and the evolution we see is not so positive. I refer here to the Planetary Boundaries. Some people may know this already. It's a system developed by the Stockholm Resilience Center, and they've defined 9 planetary boundaries, and they've also defined the boundaries within which we need to stay. You could say the tolerances, so to speak. And this is the 2023 result. And as you can see, of these 9 boundaries that have been defined, 6 have been crossed. One of them is this one here. I don't know if you can read that very well, but it is biosphere integrity. So fundamentally, if that biosphere integrity falls down, we're in serious trouble. But there are other things. Climate change is here as well. biochemical flows, phosphorus and nitrogen are there as well, several others. In fact, I've recently read an article saying that this ocean acidification is also already crossed. There's someone who is able to influence my screen. I would ask you not to do that because it's a bit confusing for me. Okay. Basically, we can say 6 or 7 of these 9 boundaries are crossed. Now, from a quality point of view, what does that mean? It means that production comes to you as quality manager and they say, we have here a container of parts ready to ship to the customer, but 6 of the 9 critical dimensions on the drawing are out of spec. And then the question is, are you shipping these parts? And if you ship these parts, do you sleep well? This is the sort of situation where the planet is in. So it's really urgent to take action. Okay. Now, with that knowledge, how could we define a holistic strategy and how could we describe the context of our organization, taking this biosphere context into account? Oops, sorry. In 4.1, we could write, we operate within Earth's biosphere. Its health is an important issue to us. And in order to stay in line with the standard, climate change is included. In 4.2, we link it to the 4 elements we talked about. Earth's biosphere being an interested party, as we operate within it, we will contribute to its health by evaluating and reducing our energy consumption, water consumption, pollution, and material footprint. And fundamentally, having this is almost defining all the other steps that I will describe. It is the conviction, the commitment to contribute to the health of Earth's biosphere. And you will see that this is also a good thing for your organization as a whole. That's paragraph 4. Paragraph 5 is about leadership, and there's minimal changes needed. I already said you keep the system, you add things to it. That's it. For the rest, it stays. Now, in leadership, one of the things you need to define is the quality policy. You probably have a quality policy right now. You definitely have one if you're an ISO 9001 certificated company. And you could build next to that a sustainability policy. But I wouldn't do that. If I were you, I would create one company policy that contains these elements. So what was proposed in paragraph 4 as a description of the context, introduce within your quality policy. The quality policy must include objectives. You need to set objectives. And you need to be committed to fulfilling these objectives as a leadership thing to do. In this case, you add biosphere requirement objectives on the 4 elements. I'll come to that in the next slide. Just like you're committed to satisfying customer requirements, you can be committed to satisfying biosphere requirements. And the concrete steps to make that happen will be in chapter 6, planning, because that's where you define the objectives and where you turn them into real, some people call them KPIs and the likes, but in real targets that you are going to work in order to achieve. Okay. So if you go to paragraph 6, planning, there's a 6th one saying actions to address risks and opportunities, and you need to look to prevent or reduce undesired effects. Well, creating objectives will do just that, and starting improvement projects, which are the actions you will take in order to improve from a sustainability point of view, will help exactly to do that. The key lies in the objectives. Now, the standard talks about quality objectives. There's no, it's not forbidden to have sustainability objectives in there, and they really are the key. So what the proposal is here is that you create objectives relating to these critical impacts. And then you fundamentally treat them as any other objective. They are part of the objectives of your system, and the system is running. The system is designed in order to achieve the objectives. These objectives will be part of it. Now, let me give you an example of what that could be. And again, I need to thank Ram for this. We have our 4 focus elements. And again, from one company to another, one might be more important than the other, but these are the 4 we look at. And we have objectives that we can place over the life of a product. Now, most companies today will focus on this. And this is, what do we do within our own production? Okay. If we produce something, how much energy do we consume? How much water do we consume? Maybe also how much material do we use? And we look at reducing that. That's actually something that many companies are doing right now, because this is immediate money. And you need to do that. That's a good thing to do. However, it may well be that your impact, in this case, the impact of your products on sustainability, is here maybe the least of all. In many cases, in subsequent phases of the life of a product, your impact becomes much bigger. And the second one is use, because you'll make a product for someone to use it. Now, I'll give you a simple example: washing machines. Imagine you're producing washing machines. Then, of course, to produce the washing machine, you need energy, you need water, you need material, and you try to pollute as less as possible. That's normal, and you will work on reducing that. However, once you have made that washing machine and you send it to a customer, that customer will be using it for 10 years, 2 or 3 times a week, consuming energy and water. In other words, the impact on the biosphere, looking at just these 2 to focus, will be much bigger in use than it will be in your own factory. This is determined by the design of your product. And I'll come back to that in a second, but it means that the design of your product is extremely important for the overall impact of what you do on Earth's biosphere in these 4 elements. And we sometimes forget that. We focus very much on what we do ourselves, which isn't bad, eh? Everything you help helps. But it could well be that this, and even disposal and recycling, has a much bigger impact. So the role of design and development is extremely big. We'll come back to that in a second. Now, I said at some point in time, management commitment, and I said it shouldn't be too difficult to get management commitment. And I know that this is one of the biggest frustrations of quality people, often, of not getting management commitment. So why am I saying it's not going to be difficult? Well, first of all, because if you work on this is bottom line gains. I mean, if you consume less energy, less water, less material, you spend less money, you make a bigger profit. I don't think there's any CEO who would oppose to have better bottom line results. That's one. Secondly, if you can make something that is very interesting for the consumer, like a washing machine that uses 20% less energy than the competition and 10% less water, even if that consumer is not very interested in sustainability, he will still be interested in his wallet. So this is something that can really help you increase your market share compared to the competition if you do this well. Again, I do not think any CEO would object to increasing his market share. And finally, if you do this well, you can without greenwashing, say that you really work on being a sustainable company, both here, and here. You make sure that there's as little polluted as possible at the end of life of your product. You can market this. And you can market this honestly, because there's a lot of dishonest marketing and greenwashing, of course, but you can market this honestly. Now, if you say, yes, but in my company, my CEO is not interested in bottom line or market share or a good reputation, I think it would be best to think about changing jobs, because that company is not going to last long. So you will get support if you can present it in that way, and it works in that way. Now, some comments on the objectives. As I already said, the use and disposal objectives are extremely important, and they're highly impacted by design. So the design has an important role to play there. Even the production objectives are impacted by design. Think about design for manufacturing. So if you can manufacture it easier, it'll help. Purchasing will also play a part there. As you could see in the table I showed, we talk about quantities, the amount of energy, the amount of water. I know people sometimes like cost, but in this case, I prefer not to introduce cost. You can calculate it as an extra benefit, but the cost of that is, of course, dependent of external factors. You are not defining the cost of energy. You are not defining the cost of water, and changes in these costs could make you look bad or good when it has nothing to do with you. So focus on what you manage, and you manage the amount of energy and the amount of water. The by unit reporting makes it independent of the economic situation, because you could be very low in energy consumption because you're not producing much anymore. So that's not wise. And of course, you need to keep all your objectives synchronized. Think about things like ocean cannery, quality, policy, and the likes. But this is no different from any other objective that you play now. Now, how would you implement that? And again, this doesn't have to be extremely complex, because you can put a small team of experienced people together. I think they will know, if you evaluate these 4 areas, what are the most critical ones. You know that if you work in an organization and you look at these 4 points, you can start working on the ones that are the most important and define improvement projects. I come back to that later a little bit. And in parallel, you can develop measurement systems for all 4 if you think you don't have enough info. One warning: don't overmeasure. Don't overmeasure. Having a good idea can be enough to start acting, because the key lies in improvement. That's why I think the European law should have been the reporting and improvement directory. They missed that out, and that's where it's going to have to come from. Okay. The support paragraph in ISO 9001 stays the same. There's no changes needed. As far as operations is concerned, I'll have a little bit expansion, but some of it I've already said. Within a production environment, of course, the 3 key ones: design, purchasing, production. Looking at design, I already said a lot about that, but fundamentally, you need a state of mind within your design to help define a sustainable future. And putting it in 2 simple rules. The first one is, the new design must be more sustainable. Either more sustainable than the old design, or if you do benchmarking, more sustainable than what's on the market, which is probably a better thing to go for. And that basically means that you create a design that is more sustainable to produce, in use by the customer, and when disposing, recycling. That's why these 3 phases are so important. And basically, you add your 4 key issues to the design inputs. And you turn that into objectives. We want it to be 20% more energy efficient, 10% more water efficient, and so on. It becomes a part of the design objectives, and automatically it is taken up as a functional requirement in your failure mode and defects analysis, your evaluation of your design. your design reviews, so that throughout the design, you look if you achieve what you needed to achieve as defined in your design objectives. As far as purchasing goes, the key is to support your suppliers and to cooperate with them. It's a bit people familiar with CO2 exhaust and the like, scope 3 emissions, the fact that you have your emissions, but you also have what happens upstream and downstream. I already talked about the downstream, the customer. Upstream is with the supplier. Indirectly, your efforts already reduce the impact, because if you have less energy, less material, and so on, you have less to buy. So making these things, the impact there is already reduced. Your suppliers might not like that, but it's important to explain your approach to your suppliers, because they can also profit from that by applying that. Now, one thing I know, especially for smaller organizations, is that although you are the customer, you don't always have much power, because typically your customer will be a lot bigger than you are, but very often your supplier is a lot bigger than you are as well. So even if you are the customer, you don't always have that much force over your supplier, and bigger suppliers might have their own approach. But you can help smaller suppliers develop a similar approach, and the gains you can get, they can get as well if they adopt this philosophy and implement it. And then we come to the production part. Well, this is applying quality improvement methods. I'll have a referral here to the Quality Sustainability Award by IAQ that we have started in 2020. If you scan this, you get to the award website. We're currently working on our website, so it might be that this is shifted to the IAQ website. That will happen at some point in time, but if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask any of us. We will help you. But what we have seen in this QSA, which is an award for projects using quality methods leading to sustainability results, that you can have a major impact in a very short time. We've seen an enormous potential for application of quality methods in all areas of industry. We've seen impact on all aspects of sustainability. As I indicated previously, all these projects increased profitability in addition to making sustainability results. And just for your info, for the 2025 award, we had worldwide 70 applications. These are 70 projects that use quality to improve sustainability. The final is actually on December 11. It's an online session, and you will get information through IAQ of that as well. And then it becomes easy, because performance evaluation and improvement, your standard is what it is. You do an annual review, you do internal audits, and you evaluate whether your objectives are being achieved. These objectives now contain sustainability objectives, but the system stays exactly the same for improvement. If you're not reaching your target, you need to do improvement actions. So concluding, because I'm watching the time here a little bit, concluding, fundamentally, I think all companies can work on sustainability using this method. Even if you would not have an ISO 9001 system, you can use this objectives table to define a couple of objectives that are important for you and that you can work on. And ideally, companies that do that outperform other companies and indeed increase their market share. And we get the more sustainable solutions replacing the less sustainable solutions. The big question is, of course, will this be enough to safeguard the biosphere? This is what we can do as organizations, and I think what we should do as organizations. Will it be enough? Well, it's a big world outside of organizations, and personally, I don't think so, given the observed evolutions. Talking about climate change as an example, and all the data is there actually, and despite all the efforts that's being done on climate change, the observation is that things get worse faster. So more will be needed, of course. And I'll give you some, I don't know, advice, guidelines, things to think about. It's not me to give advice of the future, but anyway, things to think about and reasons why I think we're not getting there yet. There are just 2 slides, but the first one is this one. Some of you may know the COP meetings, Conference of the Parties, where people, 10,000 people from all over the world gather in one place to discuss about climate change. And they've been doing that 29 times, and they'll do it a 30th time in Brazil very soon. And out of it comes nothing. We have the IPCC that has made 6 reports, and the 6 reports all say the same. We know what to do, but we don't do it. Fundamentally, that's why things get worse faster, of course. Now, why is that? All those people that go to that meeting think the world looks like this. And they go this as representative of a country with one goal: I need to get the best possible deal for my country. What they forget is that what happens here influences this, what happens there influences this. The real world looks like this. And we won't get a breakthrough on these meetings unless people go there with the intention of all together, what can we do to safeguard the biosphere, in this case, from global warming? So we need to get a much more holistic planetary view. It is not a set of countries with individual opposing guidelines, opposing targets. It is one planet to be safeguarded. The second thing is that we need to get away from a quantity economy to a quality economy. There's a time for sufficiency and quality of all life. Several economists work on that. There's a well-known model, of course, is the donut model by Kate Raworth, that basically says we need a minimum economy in order to guarantee that everybody has access to this. And mind you, this is not that much. But we need to avoid an economy that breaks ecological ceilings, like the 6 or 7 planetary boundaries that already have been crossed. These are actually the planetary boundaries on this graph here. Now, the situation today is that the social foundation can easily be covered. Our current world economy is more than big enough to guarantee this for the 8 billion people on the planet, but it's way too big on certain elements and on certain places, so that the ecological ceiling is broken at many levels, as already indicated. And basically, I think what we need to understand is that more or less is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is better. And that is a quality indicator. We need to get away from quantity-driven to quality-driven, and we need to create a quality of all life economy. And that is beyond the factory walls. Notwithstanding, we can do a lot within our factory walls, as I hoped I illustrated previously. And with that, I refer once more to Reflections on Quality in 10.5 columns, where you find these ideas and several others on quality. If you want to connect, this will guide you to my LinkedIn page. And obviously, I want to thank you very, very much for joining this presentation and for listening to me. Thank you so much. And we have some time for Q&A, and I'll pass it on to Somaya for that. Let's stop this. Oop.
Thank you very much, Willy. It was indeed a very excellent presentation guiding real practices. And the topic that you shared with us today is particularly very important because it highlights how businesses can tackle complexity and align their systems with their governmental and societal goals and ensure that organizations move beyond compliance or just reporting to make a meaningful contribution to the sustainable future. And you raised a very excellent point that integration of sustainability principles need to be considered in the very preliminary steps of designing a product or a service. So we have some very, thank you, Willy. So we have some very excellent questions here from the audiences. Let's turn to them. And here we have a lot of thanks message for you. So the first question is, what are the main elements to be considered in a company, sustainable company? Are they the same for government or nonprofit companies? This is the first question.
Looking from an environmental point of view, of course, we focus on these four things. And from that point of view, I think they're not different. Okay, they're not different. But of course, the actions you take are quite different. For example, because you mentioned government, which is interesting, you could look at what can government do. Well, government could look at how can we safeguard access to safe fresh water for everyone. That could be a task for government. How can we make sure that we manage freshwater reserves, for instance, so that people keep getting access to it at a reasonable price? Whereas an organization in that same country can look at, actually, they can also contribute to that by using less water for their processes, for instance, which leaves more water available as drinking water. I mention water specifically because I think this is going to be a very serious problem and not that long to go, because I mentioned the Quality Sustainability Award. In the first years, we had a lot of projects on energy conservation, of course. We still get a lot of projects on that. But the last couple of years, we've seen that we've got from different areas in the world several projects on water and saving water. So it's clear that this is becoming an important problem, of course. So yes, it's more like within this philosophy, what is our role? And the roles will be different and the actions will be different, but the philosophy should be the same.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you. And there was a question following that. Is there a global day of sustainability? We have several days around the world addressing sustainability, just like Earth Day or Biodiversity or Ocean Day. So there are several of that. But I think that we need to consider every day is the day to live sustainable, to do the business in a sustainable manner, and to establish a sustainability mindset and approach. Any comments from you, Willy?
Well, it's I would say it's a never-ending story. It's a daily battle, of course. So we have to be active on this continuously. I saw a question pass by where somebody asked, is sustainability part of ISO 9001? And of course it is not as such. The only thing that's in it now are the two notes I mentioned on climate change. However, it's not because it's not in there that you are forbidden to integrate it in there. Okay. So I go by this rule, anything that's not forbidden is allowed. Okay, that's a bit rough maybe, but nevertheless, you're not forbidden to introduce what you want, what you think are important objectives within your quality management system. The system is a good system, eh? Fundamentally, it's a plan, do, check, act logic that's in there. So why not use it and act that and just add something to it? It's not part of it, but it's not forbidden either. So.
Yeah, thank you. So we have another great question. First of all, thank you for sharing the experience, and saying, in your view, as quality managers, sorry, it doesn't show very clearly here. I'm gonna read it from here. So in your view as quality managers, what are the skills that we need to retain and we need to develop in the future to keep it super simple? Not making things complex, using tools and techniques, including the newer ones, just like artificial intelligence or machine learning.
Yeah. Well, obviously, technology is there to be used. So if it can be useful for you, you need to use it. The point I'm trying to make is that whether you apply, I mean, you're running improvement projects today for sure, certain improvement projects. Many of them will probably be cost driven. And then they maybe address a quality problem, but of course, why do you address it? Because it's costing the organization too much scrap or things like that. There's fundamentally no difference to run a project like that or to run a project on reducing water consumption. Whether it's reducing scrap or reducing water consumption, you will need to look at what are the causes, where are we wasting most of the water, Pareto, Ishikawa, and so on. So fundamentally, there's no real difference. The key lies in improvement, and the bottom line of quality has always been improvement. I think you, Somaya, mentioned at some point in time we need to go beyond compliance, and actually compliance made a big boost with the release of ISO 9000. That's 1987. But before that, I can talk about that because I'm old, of course. Before that, quality was all about improvement. It was not about compliance fundamentally. People like Turan, Deming, Ishikawa, they were all talking about improvement. And that improvement can be on anything. We've created some very powerful and good tools that we can apply in many circumstances, also for these objectives. And I think in the same way, if you can apply artificial intelligence for, I don't know, faster movement of processes and the likes, you can also apply them for less water consumption.
Yeah.
Saying that, I'm not a specialist on artificial intelligence, but it's not about the tool in itself. It's of course about what you use it for, and many tools are universal.
Fantastic. And here I want to take this opportunity to just share this with our audiences that our next webinar is planned to be on the role of artificial intelligence and digital technologies in driving sustainability and business excellence initiatives. So this is an update to share with our audiences. And here, moving forward to the next question, we have several excellent questions here. So he says, Kerry says, how can we increase demand for sustainability? Is marketing a consideration?
For sure. And actually, if you do it properly, I mentioned marketing myself, even when I showed that table of the objectives. If you do it properly, there's nothing wrong with it. Today, there's already a lot of marketing on sustainability, but a lot of it is really not substantiated by actions. So there's a lot of greenwashing going on. If you do this properly, I think you can proudly market your sustainability. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you do the right thing, you have the right to be proud about doing the right thing and to say it to people. And to show it with the data you have and with the sustainability of your products, for instance, or the recyclability of your products.
Yeah, definitely. And it could also be considered as a very solid approach to increase the awareness of the society and the customers, and to teach them and to educate them through marketing initiatives or raising awareness. So that could be just like, if being used in a correct way, in a right way, it could be a very helpful drive.
Yeah. And I must say that last remark you made, in a correct way and a right way, is a very important one. because the problem with it is that there is so much greenwashing that honest, correct people are also sort of put on the same level as the ones that do greenwashing. So we need to get that out and real sustainability in, and then by all means market it.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. We are getting close to the end of the session, and we have several excellent questions. So I'm going to ask you the last one. You mentioned disposal recycling in formulating key objectives. Many companies are now prioritizing the circular economy. Instead, how does it, the first question is, how does that fit with the keep it super simple approach to sustainability? And the second question, how can ISO 9001 principles like process control, risk-based thinking, and continual improvement be applied to support circular economy practices such as waste reduction, resource efficiency, and life cycle thinking?
You see the question in front of me here from Roberto, I see. Actually, prioritizing the circular economy, to me, the key to be successful in the circular economy will be in design and development. And you know, in my table of objectives, I had then, you know, disposal and recycling at the end. If the design and development organization is thinking about that at the moment they design it, it's going to work out. It's very much that. But keep it super simple. It's just, you know, within your design department, you are aware of this, and you could say, we will design for circularity, so to speak. That's one. The second thing is, again, about ISO 9001. ISO 9001 in itself cannot do all of that, but you can add it to it. It's again a little bit from the point. To me, you know, it all started as quality, and it's a quality management system. But you don't have to have a quality management system and a safety management system and an environment management system and a what have you management. There's one management system, okay? And if you think these elements are important for you, you can introduce them. If you feel as an organization we need to have life cycle thinking within the meaning of what we do, you add that to your quality policy and you distribute it within your organization. You say, I think the standard is a framework. It has been defined from a quality point of view, but it has never forbidden you to add other things. And I do believe very much in integrating things rather than tackling things in all sort of separate, different systems. Also, excellent, from a cost point of view. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So as we approach the end of today's session, I want to thank you once again, Willy, for sharing expertise and perspective. And this has been a very engaging discussion. I know many of us wish we had more time to continue the conversation and to discuss the other questions, but we are very time limited. And I also would like to thank all of you for joining us and sharing your perspective. We hope that you found the session informative and helpful in exploring new path to your organization's sustainability. And for further updates and to stay connected, please follow the International Academy for Quality on LinkedIn. The link is available in the chat. Stay tuned for upcoming webinars hosted by Quality in Planet Earth Concern think tank, focusing on sustainability. And also, we would love to hear from you and welcome your feedback to help us improve the webinars. A short survey will be sent to you by email, and we would greatly appreciate your comments and suggestions. Thank you once again, and I wish you all a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you, Willy.
Thank you all. Bye. No, don't mention it. Bye.